Good afternoon, this is the Ambassador. With me, your Ambassador, Jennifer Macau, and our first story goes to the Kenyan protest. As the ODM party, in solidarity with the youth, urged President William Ruto to officially quit the presidential office after the youth from the entire country stood firm, demanding for him to officially quit the office since his administration had failed to deliver and was full of false promises. The president, who denied the allegations of extrajudicial killing and mass abduction, is at the center and the end of his leadership. Nonetheless, the youth are vowed to eject him from the office. Here are the details.
President William Ruto has officially submitted to the youth's demands and has promised to engage them in a talk on whatever platform they'll suggest after peaceful demonstrations that escalated into chaos, leading to the destruction of property estimated to be worth 2.4 billion shillings.
I am open to having an engagement with the young people on a forum that they are comfortable with. If they want digital, if they want me to engage with them on X, I will be there. For example, on let's not have a spouse's office. I agree. Let's not have CASS for now. I agree. Let us not have
advisors.
Advisors. We will agree. Let us not have churches being a space for politics. I agree.
At the same time, the deputy president is planning to conduct a talk with the young people on what is affecting them, a meeting purported to counter the president's submission to the youth, who want him out of the office, basing on the grounds that he has failed in his leadership and full of lies.
Outside the framework the president has created, as a person, I'll also try to engage these young people to know what are they saying. What is it? What is it that they know that we don't? What is it they are seeing that we are not seeing? What is it that we are doing they think we can do better? What is their view of how to make our country better? We will listen to them.
The DP has also told the members of the National Assembly who voted yes to the 2024 finance bill, after even receiving red alarms from their voters, to carry their own cross and go back to the ground to seek for forgiveness from their bosses who voted them into offices.
Tukikula, tukishiba, tusitapikie wananchi ambaye hawajakula chochote. Hiyo tu. Don't display arrogance and opulence to people who are struggling. Address the people with humility and respect. These are your employers. And let our members of parliament not fear the people who elected them. Kujeni muongee na ile watu walichagua nyinyi, si ndio? Mkuje kama mumetereza, muombe msamaha kulingana na vile samo nimeendelea, si mtasemewa. So mimi nimekanywa na hao vijana. Wamenikemea the whole night. Na nimewachana na hiyo maneno. Mimi nitaongea mambo ya rais na yangu saa hii. Wabunge mkuje muongee na hao watu. Si ndio walichagua nyinyi? Mtaelewana.
Youth have been assured of their security during their planned peaceful memorial demonstrations on Tuesday across the street. President William Ruto promised that the KDF will only be deployed when the situation worsens. Davis Karani, GBS News, Nairobi.
Anti-government protests clash with the riot police in Kenya. Protests have continued in Kenya as the capital of some of the citizens demand the resignation of President William Ruto. The protest was sparked by a finance bill that would have raised the cost of living, but has since expanded to include broader grievances over the president's governance. Kenya President William Ruto stated that the country would resort to more borrowing to plug a growing budget deficit after the rejection of the finance bill that would have increased the tax revenue. Here's the full report.
The highway to Kenya's second largest city, Mombasa, was closed as protesters lit bonfires, where there are concerned that President William Ruto might change his mind and sign the finance bill before next week's deadline. Some protesters also are calling on Ruto to resign and accusing him of bad governance. Last week, protesters were deadly as police opened fire. The 2 weeks of protest have left 39 people dead, according to the Kenyan National Human Rights Commission. Ruto on Saturday put that number at 19. The president has offered to have a dialogue with Kenyan youth and has promised budget cut on travel and hospitality for his office, in line with some protesters' demands. As unemployment remains high and prices rise, there has been an outrage over the luxurious lives of the president and other senior officials. Members of the Youth But Redress protest movement has said they do not trust the president to implement his new austerity plans. Kenyan President William Ruto has said that the country will resort to more borrowing to plug a growing budget deficit after the rejection of the finance bill that would have increased tax revenue. Following deadening protests last week, Ruto declined to sign the bill and wrote a parliament to withdraw it. During a TV interview Sunday, Ruto said that the failure of the bill had hurt government's effort to ease the country's debt burden. About 60% of Kenya's revenue go to serving.
And amidst the escalating gang violence in Haiti, gang leader Jimmy Cherisia, also known as Barbecue, who has acted as the spokesperson for the gang alliance, issued a stern warning to Kenyan troops, labeling them as invaders. He stated that he would not accept the presence of the Kenyan police troops that is in Haiti territory. This comes as the United Nations Children Agency, that is UNICEF, reported over 300,000 children had been displaced due to the violence since March the violence began. Here is the full report.
The deployment of Kenyan troops to assist Haiti in combating gang violence has sparked mixed reactions, with notorious gang leader Barbecue giving a threat to the Kenyan troops.
The sons of the Saline neighborhood cannot accept any foreign troops who come to murder people in the country, risking our lives. We'll fight with our lives to defend our country and the integrity of our country.
Catherine Roussel expressed concern over the humanitarian catastrophe unfolding in Haiti and called for increased support and funding from the international community. Many children are living in poor conditions, lacking access to basic necessities such as food, healthcare, and clean water. Haiti is also facing the threat of a strong hurricane season, adding to the already dire situation in the country. As the international community works to address the crisis in Haiti, the focus remains on providing a safe and protective environment for displaced children in the midst of ongoing violence and instability.
Disturbing reports from Burkina Faso revealed a troubling pattern of the military junta alleged to use coercion and abduction to silence the dissidents, as Aruna Lore, a prominent critic of the ruling regime, was forcibly conscripted into military service after receiving a mysterious order that was last year. His abduction underscored a broader concerns over human rights abuses targeting activists and the journalist concerns of Burkina Faso's government. Listen to the full report.
Arona Lure, a prominent critic of Burkina Faso's military junta, was forcibly conscripted into military service after receiving a mysterious order last September, sparking widespread condemnation and shedding light on the junta's alleged crackdown on dissent. Lure's abduction catapulted him into the spotlight, drawing attention to a series of enforced disappearances targeting activists, journalists, and critics of Burkina Faso's military regime over the past 15 months. Civil society groups, along with the Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, have accused the junta of systematic kidnapping and conscription as a means of stifling opposition voices. As international pressure mounts, calls for accountability and the protection of human rights in Burkina Faso continue to resonate. The trajectory of these events underscores deepening concerns over democratic freedoms and civilian safety in the face of escalating conflict and political repression.
President Mohamed Ould Ghazouani of Mauritania secured his re-election for a second term after winning the national vote on Saturday. He emerged victorious in the first round with a comfortable margin, garnering 56.1% of the votes. His main opponent, anti-slavery activist Biram Ba Abeid, received 22.1% of the votes and contested the results, alleging fraud. The Country Independent Electoral Commission confirmed the results on Monday, with With a voter turnout of 55% of the 2 million eligible voters, the Constitutional Court stating they would review the numbers before announcing the final results. Here is more report.
Abeid, speaking from his residence in Riyadh, urged civil disobedience against the government and appealed to the military and security forces not to be manipulated by the government against the people. He emphasized that the battle is not over, asserting that the people will continue to resist until the end. Despite allegations of corruption and mismanagement from his opponents, Ghazouani, a former army chief, remains popular among Mauritanians who view him as a symbol of stability. The election occurred amidst regional instability, with neighboring countries experiencing military coups and jihad violence. Mauritania boasts abundant natural resources such as iron ore, copper, zinc, phosphate, gold, oil, and natural gas. However, nearly 60% of the population lives in poverty, primarily engaged in farming. Due to limited economic prospects for youth domestically, many are seeking opportunities in Europe, and some are even attempting to reach the United States via Mexico. Ghazouani's victory solidifies Mauritania's position as a key ally of the West in a region plagued by instability and violence.
And that international news brings us to our very first break. Next, we'll talk about Israel-Hamas conflicts as Netanyahu stated he is close to winning against the Hamas. We'll see also why Orban, the Russian friend and enemy to Kiev, visited Ukraine, while at the same time, Russian ambassador warned against arming Ukraine, that is supporting Ukraine with arms, while Joe Biden administration revoked 8 licenses for Huawei. And also, we'll get to see about Trump partial rule immunity. Will it power him to presidency? We have this and more lined up for you shortly after the break. Topics you can't afford to miss. Stay tuned with us.
We started an art adventure with their founders. New M Gallery is a place where artists can bring their work.
So now we're entering into something called random questions.
Okay.
My favorite part. Okay, so if you had the world's attention for 30 seconds, what would you say?
The piece here is called Morph 01. Morph 01 is
every artist, kawa ni msanii,
yeah.
You have been told no.
Yes,
So
yes.
what will you tell those artists when you wameambiwa, like how do we deal with rejection as an artist?
Sometimes people are mean and they want money out of the information that they give. Yeah, but sometimes you take a period to teach yourself also, because you're not a know-it-all.
Yes. If you were to wine and dine with an artist,
yes,
like Wakitambo,
yes,
an ancient artist, who will it be and why? Ungeuliza nini?
So through the 4 gospel books, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, John, we can know the heart of Jesus in depth.
그리고 우리가 느끼는 그 예수님을 성경을 통해 느낄 수 있어서 너무 감사합니다.
And the Jesus that we can feel him through the scriptures, and I'm very thankful about that. Jesus Christ came to this earth for our
죄를
sins.
지셨고,
He carried our sins,
십자가에 못 박혀 주고 죄의 형벌을 당하셨고,
and he was crucified, and he received the punishment for sins,
무덤에 들어가셨다가,
and he was put into the tomb,
사흘 만에 부활하셨습니다.
and resurrected in 3 days.
이것이 우리가 말하는 복음입니다.
This is the gospel that we speak.
예수님께 우리 죄를 위해 죽으신 이야기.
About how Jesus died for our sins. The purpose of Jesus being
우리
crucified.
죄를 담당하기 위하여 십자가에 못 박혀 죽으셨습니다.
He was crucified to pay for our sins.
예수 십자가에 못 박혀 죽으심으로 우리 죄가 분명히 씻어졌는데,
And through Jesus being crucified, clearly our sins have been washed clean.
참 안타깝게도 많은 사람은 여전히 죄인이라고 말합니다.
However, unfortunately, many people still say that they are sinners.
Everywhere, GBS.
Welcome back. You are still watching the Ambassador GBS Global, and we are glad to have you join us today. Now let us check on the Israel-Hamas conflict. Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu claimed that Israel was close to eliminating Hamas in the ongoing conflict in Gaza despite mounting casualties among Israeli troops. However, this assertion had been contradicted by the Israeli military own spokesperson Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari, who stated that the goal of destroying Hamas was simply throwing sand in the eyes of the public, as Hamas is an idea that is rooted in the hearts of the people. Here's the full report.
To the war among the Israel public has been growing. The army has only rescued a handful of hostages after 9 months of fighting amid mounting soldiers' casualties. 674 Israel troops have been killed in Gaza since October, with over 2,000 injured.
I returned yesterday from a tour of the Gaza division. I saw great achievements of fighting that's being carried out in Rafah. We're nearing the end of the elimination phase of Hamas's terrorist army. We will continue to hit its remnants.
Despite declaring Hamas defeat in many areas, Israel troops have been forced to return to face off with Hamas soldiers in the same neighborhoods previously declared captured from Hamas. The group has also managed to launch rockets into southern Israel, despite Israel claims that its military capacity had been degraded. Israel has killed more than 37,000 people in Gaza since last October. The International Court of Justice concluded in a preliminary ruling in January that Israel was possibly committing genocide.
Russian UN Embassy Vasily Nebenzia warned countries against providing arms to Ukraine, stating such decision may have certain political consequences. Nebenzia accused Ukraine of diverting Western weapons to criminal gangs and terrorists, but provided no evidence. He criticized the UN disarmament chief for warning and being about the potential for diversion of arms. The United States and the UK dismissed Russia claims, with the United States vowing to continue supporting Ukraine's defense of their lives and their liberty and their democracy. The dispute over arms shipments in the latest flashpoints as Russia seeks to discourage further Western military aid to Kiev. Let's get the full report.
We are discouraging all countries that have not yet done so to provide arms for Ukraine. The destiny of the weapons that will or will not be that will be eventually exported to Ukraine from wherever, the destiny is clear. They will be destroyed as the other weapons that the West and the US are supplying Ukraine with. But I presume that the decision that might be taken on the issue may, of course, have certain political consequences. Indeed, the developing world, the so-called developing world, or rather global South, is in particular Africa, is underrepresented in the Security Council, while the collective West, I would call it so, is overrepresented there, which does not reflect the current state of world geopolitics. So these processes are happening. They are painful for some of them, but they will continue to shape the geopolitics for the future.
Let's check more on Russia and Ukraine's war, as our next story features a man who's called Europe's Trump, who also happened to be rooting Donald Trump. His name is Viktor Orban. He is the Prime Minister of Hungary, and yesterday he made a trip across the border. After more than a decade, he visited Kiev. Now, this is a significant moment because Orban is not like the rest of the Europeans' head of state. Viktor Orban is a friend with the Russian President Vladimir Putin, and he is a thorn in Ukraine's side. Ever since the Russian-Ukraine war began in 2022, Orban has been in the sole dissenting voice in the European Union. He has done his best to slow down sanctions against Russia. He has tried to delay for Ukraine aid and also object Ukraine to joining the European Union. So why is Orbán in Kiev yesterday? Well, because Hungarian Prime Minister has been given an additional role. Which is this role? For 6 months, his country has taken over the EU presidency, the presidency of the Council of European Union. It is a rotating role. Every member of state gets it for 6 months, and the right now is for the Hungarian turn. And what are the responsibilities attached to the EU presidency? Well, Hungary will be on chair meetings. They will have to ensure the continuity of the EU's agenda. They will also act on a honest and neutral broker to foster cooperation between the EU states. Basically, Hungary will be taking over administrative duties. It is not a glamorous role, but every EU member has to do it for 6 months. In this new role, Viktor Orbán decided that the first thing he needs to do was to visit Ukraine. And he meets Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky, though there was no loss in this meeting. This is because Zelensky and Orbán do not see eye to eye in a number of issues. The most obvious one is, of course, the war. Orbán believes that Ukraine cannot win the war. So sending Kiev weapons is just prolonging the inevitable. Instead, Orbán says that Ukraine should seek a ceasefire. And he said the same yesterday during his meeting with Zelensky. Listen in.
I asked the President Volodymyr Zelensky to think about whether we could reverse the order and speed up peace talks with making a ceasefire first. A ceasefire connected to a deadline would give a chance to speed up peace talks. I explored this possibility with the President, and I am grateful for his honest answers and negotiation.
Orbán commended Zelensky on the recent peace summit held in Switzerland, the summit that Russia was not invited to. But Orbán probably was not being sarcastic. Why? He said peace initiatives take time to work, and he proposed reversing the order. This is what Viktor Orbán suggested. Get a ceasefire in place first and then work on a peace deal. It doesn't sound like the worst idea in the world, but it seems like Viktor Orbán's plan was not accepted, which was only to be expected if Zelensky was going to stop the war and sue for peace. He would have done this 6 months ago. But Ukraine says they will only accept a quote-unquote just peace. What does this mean? Getting back all the territory that Russia currently controls? That is, Kiev was Putin unlikely to accept this demand, which means the war will drag on. But Viktor Orbán was not on Kiev just to pitch a doomed vision of peace. He had other plans in the mission. What are these plans? Listen in.
We would like to make the relationship between the two countries better. We would like to make a broad bilateral agreement with Ukraine, similar to the ones we already made with our neighbors in the past. We would be happy to take part in the modernization of Ukraine's economy. We would like an ordered framework for this.
Today we discussed with Mr. Prime Minister Orbán the most important questions of our relations, of our neighborly relations: trade, cross-border cooperation, infrastructure, and energy issues. We've also talked about the humanitarian sphere today, everything that affects the lives of our people in Ukraine and Hungary.
Think about some of the words the two of them used: modernization of Ukraine economy,
better. We would like to make a broad bilateral agreement with Ukraine, similar to the ones we already made with our neighbors in the past. We would be happy to take part in the modernization of Ukraine's economy. We would like an ordered framework for this.
Today we discussed with Mr. Prime Minister Orbán the most important questions of our relations, of our neighborly relations: trade, cross-border cooperation, infrastructure, and energy issues. We've also talked about the humanitarian sphere today, everything that affects the lives of our people in Ukraine and Hungary.
We would like to make the relationship between the two countries better. We would like to make a broad bilateral agreement with Ukraine, similar to the ones we already made with our neighbors in the past. We would be happy to take part in the modernization of Ukraine's economy. We would like an ordered framework for this.
Today,
Pardon the pun, think about the words that the two of them used: modernization of Ukraine's economy and infrastructure and energy issues. The two leaders were talking about business, the business of rebuilding Ukraine. There is a lot of money to be made on that, and it seems Orbán wants a slice of the pie. Zelensky may be willing to pay that price piece for Hungary's support, because even though the EU presidency is an administrative role, Orbán now has more power to create hurdles for Ukraine, and Zelensky will be hoping to avoid that, while he focuses on surviving the Russian attacks. In a bid to tighten restrictions on Huawei Technologies Company Limited, the Biden administration revoked 8 licenses this year that had permitted certain companies to supply goods to the Chinese telecoms giant. This move comes with escalating efforts to curb Huawei's resurgence in global markets, despite the company's persistent denial of being a security threat. Here is the full report.
The U.S. Commerce Department, responsible for overseeing export policies, disclosed in a response to inquiries from Republican Congressman Michael McCall that it had taken action to revoke additional licenses involving Huawei since the beginning of 2024. Huawei, Qualcomm Incorporated, and Intel Corporation were among the entities affected by these license cancellations. The Commerce Department had previously announced in May that it had revoked unspecified licenses. Huawei stunned the industry with a new smartphone powered by the cutting-edge chip from Chinese manufacturer SMIC, despite U.S. export controls on both companies. This move contributed to a 64% surge in Huawei smartphone sales in early 2024, according to research firm Counterpoint. Since 2018, the Commerce Department has approved licenses worth $335 billion out of $880 billion in applications seeking permission to sell to Chinese entities on the entity list. The agency highlighted that $222 billion of these approvals occurred in 2021, Biden's first year in office, out of $560 billion in applications received that year. The Biden administration's actions against Huawei reflect ongoing concerns about national security risks posed by the company, despite efforts by previous administration to loosen restrictions on its access to American technology.
Now, yesterday we all heard about Donald Trump's immunity, and the question is, who is winning the United States presidential election? It is hard to say certainly now, but increasingly, Donald Trump's chances are looking better. His opponent, Joe Biden, looks increasingly weak after fumbling his way through a presidential debate. There is a talk of Democrats looking to replace him, which would clear the path for Trump. But his biggest hurdle were his legal battles. Trump faces all criminal charges in 91 criminal charges in 4 cases. And now he may get some relief on that front too, thanks to the United States Supreme Court. It delivered a judgment yesterday, a judgment on the powers of the president, and it seems that one of those powers is immunity. Not for everything, but immunity for any official act they would conduct. This is what United States Supreme Court said, that a presidential and official or private acts can be prosecuted, but not for his or official acts. So it is not totally immunity, it is partial. And yet it helps Trump. He is calling it a big win. This is what he posted in his social media platform, that is Truth Social. It is said, a big win for the Constitution and democracy, proud to be American. That is what Trump posted. Now, Trump is not the president of the United States yet, not yet anyway. So why is he celebrating this ruling? Because it may power him to the White House again. You see, Donald Trump is facing a number of legal challenges, like I just said, like the January 6th case, On January 6, 2021, there was a riot on the United States Capitol building. Trump supporters stormed the building because of the loss of the presidential election, and Trump was accused of inciting that riot. A few days later, Joe Biden took the oath as president of the United States, and Trump has been facing trials over this. But this as long comes as a new ruling by the United States Supreme Court that was yesterday. It granted immunity to Donald Trump for his official acts as president, the acts that were conducted by his official capacity as the United States president. What does this mean? Well, no one can be sure at this point. It is open for interpretation. Did Trump talk to the rioters in his official capacity as president, or did he address them as a private citizen? That is for the courts to decide. Now let's check more deeper, and they will take him to figure this out, to create a rule book for official and unofficial acts of the president. And that the fact that time will be needed and certainly will help Trump because of the moment he just needed to avoid trials for a new month. The presidential elections is slated for November. Trials are lined up in some of the cases against Trump, but the scenario has changed. There are new rules and limits in the play, meaning the courts will have scored through the legal documents and Trump's cases, and line by line, they will have to decide what is an official act and what was not. And that could take months, if not years, long enough for Trump to return to the White House if he wins, and just grant himself a pardon, which president can also do. Trump opponents know this. Joe Biden himself noted, and this is what he had to say. Listen in.
Now the man who sent that mob to the U.S. Capitol is facing potential criminal conviction for what happened that day. And the American people deserve to have an answer in the courts before the upcoming election. The public has a right to know the answer about what happened on January 6th before they are asked to vote again this year. Now, because of today's decision, that is highly, highly unlikely. It's a terrible disservice to the people.
Biden admitted that it is highly unlikely that Trump will go to trial before the election. So with this immunity ruling, the Supreme Court has made it easier for Trump to get re-elected. That is to win the election. Now, irrespective of a trial, Trump's core supporters were going to vote for him anyway. But in America, the deciding factor is often the swing state voters. They decide on the votes. They could have been swayed by the legal proceedings. Trump could have lost their votes in the trials that began, but now he may be able to hold on some of the undecided votes. Basically, Trump has no trials to worry about before November election, and Joe Biden is taking this hard. Yesterday, he made this plea to the American voters. Listen in.
I know I will respect the limits of the presidential powers I have for 3.5 years. But any president, including Donald Trump, will now be free to ignore the law. I concur with Justice Sotomayor's dissent today. Here's what she said. She said, in every use of official power, the president is now a king above the law. With fear for our democracy, I dissent. End of quote. So should the American people dissent. I dissent. May God bless you all. May God help preserve our democracy. Thank you.
He spoke about Justice Sotomayor, who did not agree with the immunity verdict. She said, it makes president, and I'm quoting, king above the law. This ruling makes president king above the law, and the way the things are going, Trump may end up exercising royal power and from the Oval Office. That will be next year. That international news brings us to the end of our Ambassador GBS Global. It's been a pleasure having you on board, joining us to the end. Here at the Ambassador, we continue to bring you the latest updates and global developments as you keep it locked with us. Have been your Ambassador Jennifer Macau, and I'm looking forward to seeing you here at the Ambassador tomorrow, same time, same place, at 1 p.m. And may you all have the most beautiful and a wonderful afternoon. See you all then.